Hey Internet, my name is Scott McMahon. This is Scottie Teaches. Today we're in Photoshop and we're going to be learning about generating image assets. It's a feature that's been around for a bit in Photoshop, but again, I don't think a lot of people know about it or use it or understand what it can actually do. And it's a great feature. So let's get started. As I said, it's Photoshop and it's generating assets. And what it allows you to do is to generate assets of the different parts of your Photoshop file. So I have a Photoshop file here. It's a photograph I took last year of V. Roberts, a friend, who also has a fitness YouTube channel. I'll put a link down to that if you're considering doing some fitness stuff. I'm just going to open up my layers palette here so we can see how the file is built. It's not about going through and how I built this file. I just have it built this way so I can show you different aspects of generating assets. So, first thing is that there's two parts to generating assets. There's stuff that happens in the layers palette, and the overall thing that has to happen is we need to activate it through the file menu. So I have this file saved. It is called generating assets V00. This is what I'm starting with. I'm just going to do a save as, and we're going to call it 001. Saved it to a very specific folder, and it's over here, so we can have a look-see. I have two files. I've got a V00 and a V01. And we come back to my Photoshop. So that was only to show you where the file exists, because generating assets creates a folder on its own once you activate it right where the Photoshop file exists. So wherever that Photoshop file is, right beside it in the same root location will create a folder with your generated assets. So as I said, there's two parts. The first part, under File, we're going to go almost halfway down to Generate, and we're going to click on Image Assets. And once we do that, we notice that there is now a checkbox. So that has started the process. But because I don't have any assets sort of listed or identified in the Layers palette, nothing is happening file-wise. So let's go to my layers palette and let's try to understand what's going to happen. There are three file types that we can generate assets for. We can do .gifs, .jpegs, and .pngs. Yes, Photoshop does all kinds of other file formats, but those are the three that people use, especially for the web, and that's where this sort of came out of, is generating assets when you need lots of different parts for different aspects of a web design. So looking at this file, I have it broken down. I have a folder. This is kind of how I work, but I have a folder. And within that folder, I have other folders and I have other layers, and I'm using clipping masks. I'm using regular masks. Folders. I've got text layers. It doesn't really matter. That's why I have it built this way. I'm going to show you how generating assets works. So the first one that I'm going to create an asset for is just the logo here. And you'll see here the logo in the bottom left-hand corner, the EOCX logo, the blue logo. I have it as a smart object. And the way in which you activate generating assets is by changing the name of the layer. So right now it is logo-SA nothing. That's it. And all I have to do is, at the end of it, is add a .png. And that's it. If we switch over to my second screen, we now see that there is a folder called Generating Assets. And if I open it up, there is a file called logo-sa.png, exactly the same as the layer. And I'm on a Mac, so if I just highlight that, press the space bar, we can see a preview that yes, this is a PNG of the logo in blue. I'll get rid of that. I'm going to go back to my Photoshop window, my main window, the photo here of the cyclist riding for Team Eurosports, V. Roberts. So I've done that, and if we notice that we have the way in which it's built, that I have the logo clipped to the blue. The blue is clipping the logo shape, and the blue is just a generated file. So if I change the color to a red and say OK, again, that's all I did. And we go to my second window view, and if I press the space bar, we get a preview, and the logo, the PNG, is now red. So the great thing about Photoshop and generating assets is that it's live. So as soon as you make any kind of change, regardless of whether or not you have saved the file, the image assets are updated. So that's one image asset. Let's say that I want to have a different image asset. And let's see how it applies to something like a folder. So let's look at this folder. Folder, I have team name, I've got V. Roberts name, I've got a horizontal line, and I've got the type that says Team Eurosports. So if I turn that off, we can see that it's all three of those parts. So if I change team name to team name, now let's try this one with a .png as well. And if I switch over to my second screen, we will see that now I have team name .png. Press the space bar, and there it is, taking the shape and size of just those text and object layers. So let's go back to Photoshop. So let's have a look now at what else we can do with it. I said that there were 3 different file types that we could do. So even though we've called this one the PNG on the folder, let's see if we can actually separate out stuff within the folder. So I'm going to double click on V. Roberts and press .jpeg, because that was another file type that we can do. So if I switch back over to my second screen, we'll see that we have V. Roberts JPEG. And if I press space, 2 things that we notice. 1, that yes, it worked and it's a JPEG. 2, how it's different than a PNG is that there is now white. If the layer that you're doing Photoshop, that you're creating and generating an asset from, is transparent and you use a PNG, it will be transparent. But JPEG does not have a transparency aspect to it, so therefore it fills it in with white automatically. It creates a squared off JPEG. So let's go back. So now I'm going to go through this. So now we understand that not only can I have an image asset for the whole folder, but individually I can have image assets for every part along the way. So every one of these layers, every one of these folders can have an image asset. Now, I don't know if anybody noticed, one of the challenges is that on the Photoshop file right now, V. Roberts, the type is white. But when the JPEG was made, it was black type. And that is because the type is black, because for this whole folder, I've been using a clipping mask. So if I take the clipping mask off, we see that the type is actually black. And that's just to show you at what point, what's important about how we make PNGs, GIFs, and JPEGs. Depends on how the Photoshop file is built to what we will get in terms of the export. So overall, if I wanted an overall PNG and JPEG of this whole file, I would go to the top level to the folder. And this is one of the reasons that I work in this sort of format, is so that I can do stuff like this. So if I want both, let's say I want both a JPEG and a PNG of the whole image. Well, I can do a .jpeg, and I can add by adding just a comma, and then I can have the same name or I can have a new name. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to call it the same thing, video test .png. And let's go to my second screen, and sure enough, we have video test JPEG and we have video test PNG. And they are both there. So the great thing about video assets is that, or generating assets, is that it works on one layer. You can create all 3 of those images that you need, and you can get as granular as every level that you need to have, right down to a piece of type, a folder, even a color, any of those things that you need to have image assets created and generated. This is a great way. So recapping, under File, we were going to set a Photoshop file to image assets. You want to make sure that that checkbox is on. And then on any of your layers, you want to just go in and change the name from this one line to .png. And that's it. Thanks for watching. This is generating image assets on Photoshop. Thank you very much.